Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another Beasts of the Mesozoic figure, and not only that, a Raptor series release. This is probably one of my favorites, and this is actually the second one of these that I have had the pleasure of owning, because I did purchase this initially when the original wave of these had come out, but I actually recently acquired this in a lot of a few of the Beasts of the Mesozoic figures, so why not have a second? And I figured since I already had the other one already out of the packaging and everything, I would just review this one straight from the start. The packaging of whoever owned it, though, it's a little bit dirtier than I would have liked, but, it's not the end of the world. You can see we've got a really nice image here on the front of the box, then the little, slip cover area here of the dinosaur in question here, as we have the Saurornitholestes, and you can see that image looks really cool, but you can also see we've got the window area here where we can see the figure contained within. It's just that the glare is absolutely massive and we can't really see it right now. But as we move here to the back, you can again see the really cool artwork that was associated with this release, as well as a checklist of some of the other fans' choice Raptors that are released in the line. And you can also see some info on the Saurornitholestes down there. So I'm pretty darn excited to get another look at this one because it's been quite a while, and I actually have this figure in storage because when I had originally purchased this was long ago where I didn't actually have my collection set up or anything, so it's actually still sitting in storage. So it's been quite a while since I've taken a look at this one. So let's pop it out of the box and do just that. So here is our base, as well as the alternate connection that you have if you would like to use that one as opposed to this one. We've also got some alternate toes to switch out if you choose to when it comes to your Saurornitholestes. And then, of course, the figure itself, and it looks absolutely awesome. And honestly, I would say this one looks potentially nicer than the one that I had originally. I just feel like the colors on this look a little more vibrant than I really remember. It looks really, really nice here in hand. Definitely some gorgeous coloration moving through the course of the figure. But as with all of the Raptor series releases, let me try to get this standing on the base. It's not standing perfectly, but it's there. But as with all of the Raptor releases, I feel like they're honestly underrated because these Raptor releases were like the beginning of the Beasts of the Mesozoic, which is obviously one of the most historic and overall fan favorite lines of dinosaur figures that have ever occurred. So the Raptor series being the original release, I feel like at that point it was like, well, are they cool? Are they not? We don't really know. We're just kind of getting into it. And even as the Raptor releases were still moving on, I think people were still, some people absolutely loved them. Some people were still a little bit questioning of them. And even myself, I can say initially, like when I had first purchased some of the Raptors, I wasn't the biggest fan of articulated dinosaurs. So I was like, oh, I don't really like them that much. They're pretty darn cool. But it wasn't until a little while after that I really started to realize how much I actually do love articulated figures. My problem were, the articulated joints where you could just see so many joints. And at that time, I was just such a big fan of more like realistic, lifelike models as opposed to articulated dinosaurs. And, as time went on, I really started to fall into line of loving the articulated aspect of dinosaur figures. And now I'm like over the moon in love with articulated dinosaur figures. And now that I get to go back and revisit the Raptor series, it's like new me wants to smack old me, or I should say modern me, wants to go smack old me forever thinking that these weren't anything but absolutely excellent, because they really are. They are just gorgeous, and that is definitely the case with this Saurornitholestes. So let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Saurornitholestes, straight away you can see some really nice skin texture here on the snout. You've got some gorgeous detailing as well as some really nice paintwork. I feel like that's super realistic, super lifelike paintwork that they've applied to the snout of the Raptor. You can even see some variation of color as you have grays, and you've got some variations of browns around the nostril. Even more of that here running along the lower jaw, and then a nice dark wash, or maybe that's been dry brushed over. And it all looks really nice, definitely highlights the detail in a very realistic way. And then as we move back into the face, you continue to see even more color variation, as you have all kinds of variations of lighter and darker shades of brown. And they've also dry brushed a lot of the feather detail out really nicely. And as you lead back into the eye socket area, that's where you begin to see the feathers take shape, and you've got that really nice bluish tone there color around the eye that kind of, circles around the eye, leads back, and then transitions into a reddish coloration. It's all really nice looking, really flashy looking colors. Another thing I love about the Saurornitholestes is this really cool head crest that we have going on here with the feathers, and it's also, on top of being really nicely sculpted, very realistically sculpted. You can see how all the feathers kind of sit differently from each other, which is a nice realistic aspect to the figure. And there's that nice bluish tone up there, which really highlights that crest in a very nice way. As you move down here into the neck, you begin to see just tons of color, as you have this really cool kind of striping effect moving down the course of the neck, and you've got all kinds of variations of colors included in that area. And I honestly am not even going to attempt to try to pick out each and every color because there's just so many in there. But you can continue to see again that the feather detail looks really nice as we move down. As you lead into the body, we have a little bit of a finer feathering here leading into the actual body itself, and you can see more of that striping effect. And again, just tons and tons of color. There is a lot going on when it comes to the coloration of this figure, more so than many others. And you can just see all kinds of variations of like browns, tans. I can even see light hints of reds and blacks and everything. There's just a ton of different variation of color, and it's very nicely applied. And there's also some nice dry brushing techniques to bring the detail out even nicer. And you can see we have another lighter tone here on the underside, and I love the fact that they've dry brushed a lot of it out with a darker tone underneath to really highlight the detail of the feathers. As you lead down into the arm, you continue to have more of that kind of patterning and striping and designing, and then as you lead out into the arm a little further, you get this really nice display of plumage with these gorgeous greens. As you move out, you've got more feathers, almost like flight feathers, even though obviously it couldn't fly, but some nice feathers here leading out that look really good. And when you get nice and close, you can see how gorgeous the detail of those feathers really is. You can see it really just pops, and so much time was spent sculpting these out to make them as realistic as possible, which I am very thankful for. And as you run down the course of the fingers here underneath the feathers, you can see some scoots running down the fingers. You can also see some very nicely painted nails. We've got a lighter tone here down on the underside of the hand, and the nails also have, again, a nice glossy black tone to them, so they shine like they probably would. You can see some variation of color here on the underside of the arms. Again, when it comes to all those feathers, they're also nicely painted on the underside, but obviously the flashier side is out here on the outer side because you would want that for display. And then as you move back here and you hit the hip region of the dinosaur, you can see again some variations of browns and stuff up here on the top. And then as you move down here into the thigh, you've got more striping, which I think looks really nice. This very dark kind of a black striping that moves down the course of the front of the thigh. Really nice, very striking striping right there. But you've also got, again, some more variation of color as you move back, and a pretty nice transition to a lighter tone the further back into the thigh you go. And then as you move down a little bit further into the calf, you can kind of make out the muscle definition of the calf. Like, you can see some bulkiness there, even if it is completely covered in feathers. You can see more variation of color in that area. And you can also see the feathers become finer and finer the further you move down, because then, of course, you return to the skin texture of the dinosaur as you lead down into the foot. You've got some nice scoots running down the front of the foot down into the toes. Very nicely painted nails, again, with the, nice glossy black. We've got the dew claw and everything, which you can see now. You can actually see it poking out here, but you can see it better over on the other side of the foot. But as you move back up here into the tail, you again have more really cool designing and striping. As you lead out into the tail just becomes more and more impressive as you go out, because you get not only these really nice greenish tones, but a very impressive display of plumage as you move out into the tail. The tail feathers are very striking. They have this really cool striping effect with the greens, and then the kind of like a white running along the outer edge of the tail feathers. So just adding that gorgeous display of flashy plumage out there. And then you have just like some variations of darker browns with maybe some blacks and stuff I could see picking up here and there on the underside of the tail feathers as you move back. Of course, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference over here. You can see, again, the eyes painted really nicely. It also sports a nice gloss coat, just like we had seen on the initial side. And then, of course, we've got tons of articulation for the figure, but you can see the inside of the mouth has that nice realistic tone of color in there, and you've got the teeth sculpted out very nicely. And the teeth are painted pretty nicely. You can see actually a little sloppiness, which isn't something you usually see on a Beasts of the Mesozoic figure, so that's kind of shocking to me, but still by no means is it bad. Like, it doesn't look bad, it's just a little bit sloppy, but you can see a nice gloss coat there on the inside of the mouth as well. The detailing there looks really good no matter where you look at it. And then again, like I said, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference on this side any more so than what we had seen on the initial side. Being a fully posable figure, you're really not going to see much difference on one side compared to the other, because it's up to you to, pose it and everything. But the coloration is very nice and precise, just like we had seen, very consistent to what we had seen on the initial side. And then as far as articulation goes, again, we do have the articulated jaw. I believe we have an articulated tongue. Yes, we absolutely do. You can see the tongue moves up, kind of move around in the inside of the mouth. You can even move it to the side if you want. So you've got really impressive posability even for the tongue. And then as you move back into the neck, you've got quite a bit going on as far as, joints in the neck moving down, where you can get some really nice poses for the Saurornitholestes, get some nice positioning and everything for it to really move the head and neck around. It would have been nice to have the ability to kind of make the neck go further down. It doesn't go too far down, but, decent enough. And then as you move back here into the shoulder, you've got the ability to move the shoulder forward and back and out away from the body if you want to try to make your Saurornitholestes fly. You've also got elbow articulation as well as wrist articulation, so quite a bit of posability there. You've also got midsection articulation right here, which is probably easier to see from up above, as well as hip articulation, which can also move out and in a little bit. You've also got knee articulation, which is a little stiff currently, as well as two joints as you move down here into the ankle area. And then you also have the ability to articulate our toe here. You can see that toe can move up and down, and then these toes can swivel, but you can also remove these to add the other toes that we had. And of course, you also have tail articulation right here, and then another spot right past that, which can really get the tail up and down quite high, and then a wire tail on top of everything, just to add that little extra bit of posability for the tail of the dinosaur. And we've also got, again, the alternate toes, where they're just slightly different as far as the placement goes compared to the original toes that were on the figure. And we also have the base, which we have the alternate connection to display it. You have this one on currently. This is the one I usually use. And then you also have, again, a nice earthy area for the base. The base looks really good as well. You've got all kinds of really nice detailing on here, all sorts of variation of color with different lighter tones and greens and browns and all kinds of stuff. Again, the bases are usually just as nice as the dinosaurs themselves. You can see a very realistic, very lifelike appearance to the base, just to top off the overall visual of this incredible model. As far as a size goes, when it comes to a length on the Saurornitholestes, from the lower jaw there to the tail, you're looking at about 12.5 inches or around 32 centimeters, and then for a height in this position about 5 inches or around 12.5, closing in on 13 centimeters, and then for the tail about 5.25 or 13.5 centimeters. Now, of course, that can be very different depending on the position that you put the dinosaur in. So having one of these figures that are, super articulated, posable. It's up to you how you display it, where you put the height and stuff. So that, of course, can change depending on where you go with it. We've also got to get these guys over here. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attackback Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Beasts of the Mesozoic Saurornitholestes. And you can see it's pretty much the same size as all the other raptors are. They all sit in a very similar size range, maybe slightly different from time to time, but they're all in a very similar size range. Well, not all, but most are in a very similar size range. There are some figures in the Raptor series that are a different scale and stuff, but when it comes to the 1/6 scale Raptors, most of them sit there in a very similar size range. And I'm not really going to do a whole lot of comparisons because I just feel like it's really not needed, since we are pretty aware, I would think, at this point of how the size works for these dinosaurs, for these figures, because they, again, like I said, they're all very similar. But for one more comparison, just in case you happen to have no idea and you've never seen any of these Raptor series figures before, here is a Mattel Velociraptor next to our Saurornitholestes, just to kind of iron out the fact that they do have a pretty darn impressive size. Being 1/6 scale, you know, they are pretty impressive as a whole, and you can definitely see the size is obviously a little bit larger when it comes to our Saurornitholestes, more so than a Mattel Velociraptor. So this Beasts of the Mesozoic, super articulated, 1/6 scale, fans' choice version of the Saurornitholestes is absolutely gorgeous. And one good thing is it's actually still being sold by Beasts of the Mesozoic today. There are quite a few Raptors that were actually retired, but this one, at the very least, I know for sure the fans' choice version is still for sale on the Beasts of the Mesozoic website. So that's great news. But again, it's an absolutely awesome version of this dinosaur. I love the coloration of it. I love the sculpt, the general appearance, all of it is great. And that nice head crest that we have going on here is one of the things that instantly drew me to this figure in the first place. I think on top of the really flashy coloration, the really flashy but naturalistic coloration of it, that crest of feathers up there on the head just looked so unique and so cool that I was immediately again drawn to this one. But the sculpt is gorgeous. Again, the fine detail, whether it's the skin texture or the feather detail, it looks great. There's a lot of variation of detailing throughout, as you have all sorts of variation of sizes and style to the feathers, as well as the skin texture, which gives it, again, a super highly detailed appearance. The actual paint job as well is really nicely done. There is tons and tons of color on this. Variation of color like crazy through the course of the entire figure. Maybe one of the most colorful of all of the Raptors that I have in my collection, because there's just so much going on with this one. It's nearly impossible to actually sit here and try to list every color that you see on this figure. It's just, I don't think it's possible to do so because there are so many, which of course means that this is one of the flashiest and most beautiful looking versions of a Raptor in the entire Raptor series, if you ask me. And then of course, on top of all of that, you've got tons of articulation, giving you countless possibilities as far as posing the Raptor, which is always a great thing and probably one of the most appealing aspects to the Beasts of the Mesozoic line as a whole. This is an excellent figure, definitely a huge recommendation from me. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to where you can grab one for yourself. So make sure you do that, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.